Hey, what's going on, family? Welcome to the Manny Arango Ministries YouTube channel. Before we even get into part 2 of this video talking about creativity and how to harness the power of your creativity, I want to invite you to subscribe to this channel. We're a growing channel, we're a young channel, and I would be so honored and humbled if you would subscribe and help us on our mission to equip the body of Christ with practical tools in regards to leadership, preaching, and theology. Those are the 3 areas that we focus on this channel: leadership, preaching, and theology. So I said in part 1, if you have not watched part 1 of this video, how about you just pause this, open up a new window, open up a new tab, and watch part 1, because part 1 is going to help us. The big idea in part 1 that helps to frame both of these videos is that as a leader, if you're a leader, entrepreneur, pastor, preacher, communicator, real estate agent, whatever, if you have to sell people on anything, or if you have to get creative, you are only as good as the last batch of your most brilliant ideas. So you're only as good as the last batch of your most brilliant ideas. Therefore, I want to really help you to always have a fresh batch of new ideas. We all know how it feels to run out of creativity, to just feel like, man, I was in a creative flow and now, I don't know, I just haven't produced a great idea recently. A great idea could come in the form of, hey, this is a new person that we need to hire, or a new role that we need to create on our team. Or, you know what, our worship leader should really be our children's pastor. Or, hey, there's a community that our church is not serving well. Or this organizational chart just doesn't really make sense. Or, hey, we need a new sermon series, or some new artwork in this lobby, or whatever that creativity is. You as the leader, your organization is going to move at the speed of your amazing ideas. And so you want to stay sharp, you want to stay creative. And I gave 5 tools for staying creative in part 1 of this video. This video is all about the books, the resources that have really helped me on my journey of staying creative. So I've got them in 3 categories, and I'm going to go through these. The first category is just on straight creativity. Like, if you are an artist of any kind, these are just books on art and creativity in general. All right, this stack of books is about story and writing. Okay, so if you write, if you're a blogger, if you write scripts, if you write anything, if you write emails to your community on a weekly basis, if you write sermons, or you write books, right? I wrote my first book this year, and these books helped me a whole lot. And this is for creative problem solving. So if you're a leader, these are creative problem solving books. So I'll work through them in those categorical, in that categorical order. So first book on my list is by Kleon, and it's a simple little book. And this book is entitled Steal Like an Artist. Steal Like an Artist. It's an amazing book. I'm gonna put it right there. Steal Like an Artist. And you know what? I'm gonna do this. There we go. Steal Like an Artist. Boom. There we go. That's an amazing book that I've read. 10 Things Nobody Told You About Being Creative. I don't know if you've heard the quote that good artists steal, bad artists copy. So how do you get inspired by what you saw at another youth ministry or another church? How do you get inspired and actually steal like an artist instead of copying? And so this is an amazing book. Steven Pressfield's book, The War of Art, is probably one of the best books I've ever read in my entire life. The big idea of the book is about resistance, and this book is completely filled with highlighter marks and pen marks. This is an incredible book. I mean, if there was one book that you had to pick out of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Out of the 10 books I have here, this is the best book, hands down. It's not even a debate. You want to grab this book. The War of art. He talks about how that you have to win inner battles in order to create. All right, so break through the blocks and win your inner creative battles. That we all battle with something, whether it's insecurity or laziness or whatever it is. Steven Pressfield says that it's resistance, and that resistance is keeping you from creating the thing that's going to change the world. So as a Christian, I was super impacted by this book, although it's not from any innate Christian like inspiration. It's just an amazing book. And here's the next one, The Accidental Creative, okay, by Todd Henry. How to be brilliant at a moment's notice, okay, The Accidental Creative. So here's that. Boom, The Accidental Creative. I don't know if you've ever realized that some of your great ideas, they happen in the shower, they happen while you're driving. They're just kind of like by accident. And Todd Henry in this book helps you to go from being an accidental creative to like I don't know, someone who's purposely creative. And so some of those accidental things that are happening, they're actually the result of rhythms and routines, and you just don't know that they're that they are the product of rhythms or routines. And when you know how you're being accidentally creative, it can actually cause you to be intentionally creative. So if that applies to you, grab that book. Amazing book. Again, yep, lots of highlights and underlines, and man, I marked this thing up pretty good. Look at that, bunch of underline marks in that book. Yeah, I like to rip books apart, and my books don't stay like super neat. All right, so for the writers, if you're a blogger, you write emails to your community or subscribers every week, or newsletters, or you write books or sermons, or if you're a writer in any capacity, these books are incredible. I'll just kind of give you a right there. Oh, come on. There we go. Those are the stack of books for writers. Alrighty. The first one is all about metaphors. I know you're like, I can't believe Manny read a book on metaphors. Yeah, I did. The name of the book is I, Is, and Other. And it's the secret life of metaphor and how it shapes the way we see the world, all right? I think about creativity as an iceberg, and so this is one of those books that isn't super practical at all, but it's part of the iceberg that's actually invisible. And so yeah, I read this whole book on metaphor and loved it, and did a deep dive into words and all types of words. This is it says metaphorical thinking dash our instinct not just for describing but for comprehending one thing in terms of another, for equating I with another, shapes our view of the world and is essential to how we communicate, learn, discover, and invent. So this book is all about metaphor. It made me realize that we use metaphors every single time we open up our mouths. We talk in terms of metaphors. Made me just really, really conscious about language. And yeah, that's that. Great book. Couldn't recommend this one enough. I, Is, and Other by James Geary. Really good book. Really, really good book. Stephen King, yeah, the horror film like writer, has a book that's literally called On Writing. Before I wrote my book, I actually read this twice because I was like, if anyone has anything to say about writing, it's Stephen King, you know? So this whole book, the title of the book is On Writing, and it's just a memoir of the craft. It's him talking about the rhythms of being a writer. This book is incredible. Couldn't recommend this enough. If you write, you should read this book. If you write, you should read that book. Yep, I said that right. All right, this is Lisa Kron, Wired for Story. If you are a preacher, a communicator of any kind, you should just buy this right now. Just before this video is over, just buy it. I'm telling you right now. Most of your sermons are boring because you're not preaching in story form. You want to preach based on story, and Lisa Kron gives the science behind story. It says this: the writer's guide to using brain science to hook readers from the very first sentence. So let me say that again. The writer's guide. So if you write sermons, okay, the writer's guide to using brain science to hook readers from the very first sentence. Like, I'm not just good at preaching because I'm anointed. Like, I'm good at preaching because I've studied the science of hooking an audience from the very first moment I open up my mouth. So I use this book a lot to inform the book that I just wrote and anytime that I'm on stage. So that's Wired for Story by Lisa Kron. Wired for Story by Lisa Kron. Incredible book. I think you should grab that book. The last one is by Donald Miller, and it's Building a Story Brand. Clarify your message so customers will listen. This could have been on this pile with like the business creative stuff, like how to have creative solutions, but because he Donald Miller is a writer, like he's an author. He has an amazing book that a lot of people have probably read entitled Blue Like Jazz, which that I read in college and absolutely loved. And so Donald Miller is a for real like author. And so I thought, man, like he ties together the creative world and the business world in a way that I thought was brilliant. So Building a Story Brand by Donald Miller, absolutely incredible book. You should grab it. Let's get to this last stack. This is for leadership or business. How do you bring fresh perspective, creative solutions to the problems that are prevalent in your church or in your denomination or in your business or in your company? So the first one is just by one of my favorite speakers, one of my favorite pastors, Erwin Raphael McManus, or better known as just Erwin McManus. This is the Artisan Soul. And if you haven't seen Pastor Erwin McManus's TED Talk, you should watch it because it's really, really good. And yeah, I like this book a lot. It gave me lots of brilliant ideas. I'm like flipping through, just looking at my highlights. Yeah. Anyway, I almost got distracted because I have ADHD. Yeah, this book is totally marked up. Absolutely love this book. Good one. Okay. This book is incredible. And I did a program called the Alt MBA with Seth Godin. Anything by him should also be read when it comes to creativity. He's a marketing genius. So Linchpin, Purple Cow, anything by Seth Godin should be read, consumed. You should. He has a podcast called Akimbo. It's phenomenal. Also, anything by Malcolm Gladwell. Like, you should just consume content by creative people. One of the things that's helped me as a Christian is just consuming content by people who aren't necessarily Christian. So, anyway, all right, this book. I would not have even known about this book had I not done Seth Godin's program called the Alt MBA. This is called The Art of Possibility, okay? It's by Rosamund Stone Zander and Benjamin Zander, a married couple. Oh my God, this book was phenomenal. And I will show this to you. The Art of Possibility. This married couple wrote this book. Incredible book. You should get this book, like, and just enjoy it. Like, just get lost in this thing. I mean, this book like spoke to my soul. Amazing book. The last book is called A Beautiful Constraint. A Beautiful Constraint. The whole book is about how constraints can actually help us. And so often we're mad when there's a constraint placed on us, but actually constraints are the breeding grounds for innovation and for change and for creativity. The subtitle is How to Transform Your Limitations into Advantages and Why It's Everyone's Business. So this is a business book, but this is a great book that's right at the crossroads of business and creativity or art. And so this is an awesome book. One of the examples that they give is saying, you know, a constraint can actually lead to creativity. They talk about Dr. Seuss and how at that time he had a really well-known book called Green Eggs and Ham, and his publisher came to him and said, we bet you can't write a book only using 50 individual words. It was a challenge, and he embraced the challenge, and then like out surpassed all of his previous metrics for sales, and wrote Cat in the Hat. And that Cat in the Hat only has 50 individual words in the entire book. With 50 words and no more, he created a masterpiece. And so the whole book is about how different people do that same thing. How instead of being upset about the constraint, he embraced the constraint, and the constraint produced something beautiful. Well, right now, as of the time of this filming, we're in quarantine, which is a constraint. And in the middle of this constraint, I launched Arma, which is doing really well right now as a company. I launched Speakeasy. I started doing virtual coaching. I didn't fight the constraint. And this isn't to toot my own horn. It's just to help us try to realize the moment you fight a constraint or protest against a constraint or whatever your reaction is against a constraint, you're actually wasting time. Because the constraint's probably not going to go away, and you should see a constraint as an opportunity to be innovative, be creative, to push the boundaries on what people thought was possible. And I hope that the church doesn't just respond to this quarantine and be upset about it, but embraces it. And I hope that companies get launched and innovation happens and the church grows, because it totally can. Constraints are always opportunities, and the moment you just see it that way, so time is a constraint. Obviously, whether or not you can physically gather, that's a constraint. A language barrier can be a constraint. The amount of words that Dr. Seuss was allowed to use, that was a constraint. Yeah, so there's lots of constraints. They talk about chess, how like if two people have an unlimited amount of time to play a chess game, it's actually not chess. That what makes it chess is the constraint of time. That you don't have an unlimited amount of time to make a decision, but there's a limit placed on you, and that constraint is a part of what makes it competitive. So constraints are good. And I'm an 8 on the Enneagram, so I needed this book to help me realize constraints are good. Because if you know anything about the Enneagram or anything about 8s, we hate a constraint, all right? We fight constraints. And so this book was incredibly helpful to reshape my worldview and to reshape how I think about limitations. Let me read that to you one more time. How to transform your limitations into advantages and why it's everyone's business. So it's an incredible book. Again, I read both of these books as part of the curriculum for the Alt MBA with Seth Godin. So these are my 3 stacks of books. Let me organize this. Hey, all the links for all these books are down below. You can grab all these on Amazon, and you can thank me later, because all these books are absolute game changers. Like, seriously, just these are incredible books. And you're only as good as your last batch of brilliant ideas. And so I hope that this week's content, super helpful, super practical. How about you subscribe to this channel and recommend this channel to someone who may need it. If you know someone who's volunteering in ministry, leading in ministry, whether that's full-time, part-time, volunteering, whatever, if they're a leader, I'd love to help them with practical tools in the areas of leadership, theology, and preaching. And yeah, till next time, peace.